I would like to introduce Chunlei Wu, who is an associate professor at TSRI, and he will be presenting about BioGPS, MyGene.info, and Smart API.
All right. Thank you, Vincent. Hi, everyone. In previous last round of a BioGPS, I presented the BioGPS in one day, and also the MyGene.info, MyVariant.info in another day. So you probably familiar with all this, both tools, both projects we developed here, and so in this round two, we're supposed to focus on the collaboration around all this project we are developing with other groups within the center or across the center. So let me start with BioGPS. First, a few slides, just a brief recap of BioGPS I have presented last time. As you know, BioGPS is essentially a gene portal, and this is the interface. You start with this search box, and now you do a search, and then you get a list of genes. That's very normal. Now, if you click any of this one gene list, it will have a gene report view, and this gene report view basically contains a multiple window. So we call each window a plugin, so that people can view the a gene expression profile here, and the information here, gene basic information here, and also gene wiki here. And this is a layout. This is what we call a gene report layout. Also, you can notice that up this right corner there's a drop-down box. Right now it shows a default layout, but you can switch between the different layout for the different needs. And the user can actually customize this layout and pick the resources we call a plugin in BioGPS to make your own layout. That's essentially what BioGPS provides to the end user, and also is how why BioGPS is more is a unique compared to other gene report portal. Okay, so I think since since early February in the BD2K PI meeting, we already start to talk about some collaboration, particularly with the EBI group. We already talked about the collaboration with Henning and the team about the integration with identifiers.org. Identifiers.org is basically is backed by a so-called Myria, like a resource registry, and it contains a lot of biological specific resources, and that's actually very basically in the same scope as BioGPS. Well, BioGPS, we have a collection of gene-specific resources, and identifiers.org and Myria basically have the even a larger scope. And what identifiers.org provides is for a given resources, it will provide the stable UI, so that we can we have a stable UI to point to the exact resources, regardless of their original URL is, and also provide a lot of very useful semantic-based metadata around the resources. So this is very very useful. And during the early February meeting, we immediately start to talk about the potential collaboration. This is what we have done after this meeting. So for BioGPS, we can immediately think we can just using the identifiers.org stable UI, URL or UI, whatever. So to replace the original original a resource UI template, something like this. So for example, for this resource exact, so we have the original UI URL is like this. So this is not bad actually. Looks clean. And by using the identifiers.org, it will looks like this. And then we basically we consider much stable than the original one. also has other benefits that I'm going to mention later. And then this one is as a tail result, a tail resource. This one really have like a really long, relatively like a long URL, and while converted to identifiers.org, this is just like this very elegant URLs to point to the basically point to the same same resources, same page. So we can certainly replace or like register BioGPS plugins just using identifiers.org stable URLs. That essentially we basically dedicated the maintaining the mapping between this stable URL to the actual resources URL to identifiers.org team, so that we consider this is always stable. Whenever this resources change, we trust that identifiers.org folks will make the change so that this URL still work. So that actually saves us a lot of effort. And also, additionally, besides the stable URLs, and another good thing is identifiers.org, they have a facility to check the uptime for each resource. That's actually BioGPS we don't have. We was thinking about it, implemented that, but now if we using the identifiers.org, we don't really have to implement this feature. We can just using the dump the file which contains the uptime and like maybe the thing will be like 99% of the reliability, something like this, or some resources are broken, then we can put a flag on it. Additionally, we can, because identifiers.org, there's a lot of resources there. I think 500 or 600 right now, and this many of them maybe is not included in BioGPS and also suitable to be included in BioGPS as additional plugin. So to do that, we actually we can get the dump from the identifier.org, and that will contain all the metadata about all these resources. And especially, I think we can focus on those resources tagged with genes, because BioGPS is a gene-specific resources. So we can start with those gene-specific resources from the identifiers.org. So that will be very useful. And we already started doing some testing along this line right now. And okay, so this is one example. We already using the identifiers.org as a URL template. This is I mentioned earlier exact browser, and it will take the example gene and show you the variant annotation, variant data from the exact data set. You can see the URL template here right now. I changed to this, and by later, I think we are planning to adding another if this URL template is from the identifiers.org, we can first add a link to the URL to the identifiers.org page, so that people can have a page to view the more additional metadata about this resource. And another nice thing I mentioned earlier is the reliability score. That's from the uptime check from the identifiers.org team, so that you can see like reliability 99%. That will be very useful for us. Okay, so then on the other side, for the identifiers.org, we also talk about the benefit for them. That I think A is like identifiers.org get a very good use cases in live BioGPS application, and we can certainly provide the feedback, and that will be benefit for them for the ongoing development. And also, BioGPS has very good user communities, and I think the benefit from that is a BioGPS user can basically do the resource monitoring, and we have a feature if like a plugin in BioGPS gene report view is broken, then there's a button user can basically like flag this plugin. Then we will immediately get the email notification, so that if it's identifies.org, then we can just forward to their team, so that they will get this fixed, just in case some resource like a change a UI or template or something. Yeah. Okay. So and also additional resources entry from the BioGPS plugin library that can be useful if it's not included in identifies.org. We currently expose the BioGPS plugin RSS feed. That will be include all the recent user submitted BioGPS plugins. Okay. So that's all I have. That's all the ongoing collaboration in terms of the BioGPS, and I also want to stop here and want to hear your comments, and maybe we can already start some discussion about the BioGPS in the how any other a collaboration opportunity within the group.
Thank you, Chunlei.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, can you use the individual BioGPS plugins on their own in, let's say, a random web page? Are they independent JavaScript widgets, or are they usable, or are they meant to be used only within the BioGPS framework?
So you're asking yeah.
You showed the gene expression widget, for example. So let's say I'm only interested in that one, and I want to have it in my own page on, let's say, a protein. Can you include only that one widget, or is it really, are they meant to be running always within the BioGPS frame?
So you're talking about it when if I see a resource page, there's just say protein, maybe like a protein structure widget on this page. Can I take this widget, basically part of this web page, put it into a gene report page? Is that what you, instead of the whole page? Is that your question? Is your voice a little bit cutting? Yes, not exactly.
Okay, so I'll try again now.
Yeah.
So, can I use one of the plugins in BioGPS?
Yeah.
Independent of the rest of the BioGPS system, in my own web page? Are they meant to be used as independent widgets, or are they meant to be used only in the framework of BioGPS? So you showed in slide 1, or one of the early slides, you showed, for example, the gene expression widget. Can I say, oh, I like this one? Can I use just this in my page on protein structure, let's say? Yes.
Oh, yeah. So
how are they meant to be used? Are they suitable for independent usage in somebody else's page?
Yeah, like this BioGPS page, this is like a gene expression chart, right? And it's also just like it's a URL, and right now displayed here is the iframe. So if you want to use it in your application, you essentially can do the same thing, right? Just to your web page. Yeah, that's definitely possible. And this site is not hosted in the BioGPS server. It's like it's developed by us too, but it's just like another application, separated from the BioGPS.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Is there any framework for communication between the different widgets, or is it just they all get sent the same? Or are they meant to be just static, showing things, or are they also meant to be interactive? So I can fiddle, let's say, with a structural view on this page, and then something changes in, let's say, the gene page.
Yeah. So you mean the between plugins, right?
Yes. Is there something like, let's say, a messaging system which you define?
Yeah. 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 In BioGPS, most of the BioGPS plugin is a URL template. We call and it rendered as an iframe. With iframe, browser tend to kind of basically like a sandbox, block the messaging between them each other. But we do have a small amount. But we do have a small amount of a plugin we call a div type. Is something. It's just a piece. You can include a piece of a JavaScript and a piece of a HTML code, and that will allow any JavaScript-based communication between the plugins. Yeah, I think there's a mechanism to make it happen. And of course, if we enable that, and that must be restricted. For example, only if you submit one, and we need to have a look at what exactly is a div and a JavaScript, and it's just only from, say, a authenticated user or an approved user, something like that. That's why right now for this particular type of plugin is not really used much, because most of the site is URL template is enough, and B is not open to users. You can submit it through the plugin registration form, but in the BioGPS in the core BioGPS, that actually is possible. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We talk about some application like this before. It's something like maybe one how to say. Maybe from the gene, maybe from one plugin that's a list of the gene. Maybe if you click the one of the gene, another plugin maybe is called PDB or something will automatically change to that particular gene, something like this. So yeah, if there's a specific use case, I think we have a mechanism to make it work. That's the answer, I think. Yeah.
Okay, I'll send you something later on the BioJS I'm involved in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chunlei, can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, Andrew, yeah.
I think it might be worth mentioning although it didn't really go anywhere, it's worth mentioning the semantic BioGPS idea.
All right.
A little bit.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. We also started a project called Semantic BioGPS, and what it does is we want to have a way, because right now BioGPS plugin mostly is displaying a whole web page, right? And oftentimes right now, because all the resources, for example, stream website, it will display a nice gene interaction chart, but it probably also displays some a basic gene information, all this basically repeated information about the gene, because as a standalone website they need to provide this. But in the BioGPS case, what we really need is just as a little widget within that page. So we started a project. It's actually a Google Summer of Code project with a summer student who we want to do some so-called semantic. It's called we want to define some of a rule, for example, based on XPath, so that we can, given a page, given XPath, we can carve out this specific content out of the specific resource, and we can then harvest that and harvest this page, this widget in it, so that we can display it in a systematic way, or in another BioGPS plugin. So that's we haven't made it public, and there's still need to be done. But if there's any a good use case of that, and within our group, we can certainly to continue explore that. That probably also answer probably help to answer Henny's initial first question about like if I'm interested in resources and about this widget, how can I take this out and use it in my page? That's actually a very useful very useful way. And I want to mention probably like it depends on how the page is implemented. May not always work, but we can but for most of them, I think just using the XPath based or with some JavaScript, we can do
that. Good morning, Chunlei. Congratulations to your award. This is Pei. I have a question.
Yeah.
Part of the project now we're getting into round 2 is the goal to becoming more familiar and gain additional details.
Mm-hmm.
So I see both the BioGPS and mygene.info building on Wikipedia. And at this moment, much of that Wikipedia background to most of us at UCLA is a blurb. So we're wondering, what are the steps that I don't know if Andrew's on the call, would advise us to take to become more familiar with Wikipedia? Should we reach out to contact them?
You mean the Wikipedia, like GeneWiki, the Wikipedia, like a technical detail about the Wikipedia?
Mm-hmm. We could say technical detail or the backbones. So I think for us that's the aspect of the project in phase 2 where we would like to gain clarity, or even if it's not 100% clarity, but some clarity on details of what things are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have regular technical meetings or conferences with Wikipedia people?
I don't think there's a regular meeting.
So let me.
Yeah, Andrew. Yeah.
Oh, hi, Andrew. Good morning. It's Pei.
So, I think we don't have regular technical calls with Wikipedia. Everything we do in the context of Wikipedia is through their normal interfaces, either their APIs or their web interfaces, the same web interfaces that you use. And that is one of the challenges of working within Wikipedia, is that we don't have virtually any control over that technical infrastructure.
So controls definitely are some control or influence of their structure. It will be wonderful, but the first step would be having more frequent communications. So Andrew, sometimes we knock on someone's door, they never open the door, but do you think this is a situation we should be at least take the initiative, knock on their door? So it's a San Francisco-based agency that we could maybe reach out for an initial contact. What I didn't want to do is I wasn't clear if you have already had a contact, then I think we should all just go follow yours. But if you haven't, would it be okay we jointly reach out?
Sorry, Pepe, I dropped out for a second. So the goal of establishing the technical contact would be what?
Would becoming more familiar of the overall project. At this moment, I felt to some extent, where at least the UCLA part is building the project on a thin air.
So what would it be that you would want to?
So when I become more familiar with Wikipedia, then I could see how the long-term commitment move forward.
Well, look, I mean, I think I would guess Wikipedia's future is more stable than even an NIH grant's worth, right? I mean, I have trouble.
So,
I mean, I don't think they're going anywhere, if that's what your concern is.
so you say so because you have some data on their support structure?
Well, they are the 6th or 7th most visited site on the internet. And the Wikimedia Foundation that structures, that sort of governs them, is and has been quite stable for many years. So both financially and technically. So
what are the financial structures, Andrew?
They're not for profit. They're a 501(c), and
yeah, that part I know. But where are the funding coming from?
It comes from foundations and donations.
So that's the part I think, Andrew, from my perspective, as this project gaining increasing recognition as well as requiring substantial commitment, that's the part I would like to gain some information. Would you like to then join us to reach out, knock on their door, or you'd prefer not to?
Well, I think maybe let's have another couple discussions because, truthfully, the GeneWiki is, we are but one very small corner of the entire Wikipedia universe.
Of course, of course.
And I think they.
But we are both their users as well as their two developers.
Okay, and so to be clear, they probably have a team of, I would guess at this point, 50 to 100 people behind Wikipedia.
It says online 260 some people.
Yes, that actually doesn't shock me at all.
Mm-hmm.
I might have been thinking 50 to 100 technical people.
Yeah. It looks like all of them are technical people. It doesn't look like they have biological curation people. I think because they build tools for others to curate, right?
Absolutely. Nobody on the Wikipedia staff is paid to curate or write Wikipedia content. Right? That's the beauty and the curse of Wikipedia.
Right. So then, Andrew, the communications you have had with them is also, as you said, through the web, has not been a face link.
I've had a couple electronic communications with people. They wrote a letter of support for our GeneWiki R01. But again, I mean, they weren't committing.
There are support then. There are communications.
Yeah, very limited, but again, we aren't asking them to do anything really. It was merely a statement that they believe that this project is of value to the Wikipedia community. We weren't asking for any resources or commitment, and we were assuming on faith that Wikipedia itself, or the Wikimedia Foundation, is a very stable and term trajectory.
I think, Andrew, we don't question that, but I think that statement is better supported, for example, if I would actually know which are the foundations supporting them. And then we can do our own due diligence and structure the projects accordingly. At this moment, from the BD2K Center perspective, there are at least 3 FTEs that are on this project. And that's also a long-term commitment when we see how important these projects are. So I think from that perspective, maybe first a letter and a visit, and then we go from there. They clearly guard their pages very carefully. You probably saw they have a page on BD2K, and they were dumping most of the stuff that NIH has put on.
So a lot of that activity is actually not done by people who work for Wikipedia.
Mm-hmm.
It's just sort of community volunteers who.
I see.
It's just people in the bio community who want to volunteer to curate pages. So usually, unless there's like a dispute that's very, very difficult to resolve, it doesn't usually go up to the level of actual Wikipedia staff to evaluate it.
Mm-hmm.
Pepe?
Yes.
Just to actually a bit from our experience. So we have at DBI, we've also tried at various points in the past, well, ultimately to get EBI content links into Wikipedia in a systematic way, and had the same experience which I think Andrew had, which is it's very hard to get content into Wikipedia in a systematic manner. They are very protective of systematic large-scale content additions. And I can understand that because everybody wants to have exposure through them. And so I guess their first reaction is no. And then you have to do a lot to turn that into perhaps a little yes or so. So it's we had all this experience that it's really hard to just add links, for example, in a systematic manner. It's not impossible, but hard.
So let's look at the page. There are successful information, right? Part of it's what Chunlei has just presented, the mRNA information. The other part is what the protein data bank has been successful in linking their part to the molecular page. So you are 100% correct, and there's been these things, but nothing else. But I still would like to understand the whole concept. I don't like to just cover my eyes and just move forward.
Sarah has some information on Wikipedia funding.
Sarah, are you on the line now?
Yes, I am.
Thank you. Could you share with the group what you have found?
Sure. These are just the major factors. Maybe this will kind of give us an idea. The Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, Laura and John Arnold, Peter Baldwin, and Elizabeth Rousing, Bryn, I'm going to butcher this name, it's, I think, Cheeky Foundation, Cards Against Humanity, Craigslist Charitable Fund, Google Matching Gifts, Mary Graham, John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, Microsoft Matching Gifts Program, Jim Paca, Stavros Niarchos Foundation, Stanton Foundation, Two Sigma Investments, LLC, and anonymous donors. There are 6. So those are sort of the major benefactors. I don't know if that.
So it looks like funding are crowdsourced. If consider they have 300 people, their annual operation budget has to be somewhere 300 times 100,000, about 30 million a year. So that's pretty much gets the idea of what on average each of the donors would need to contribute to make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
So a 5 million a year will be a sizable gift to them.
Mm-hmm.
So this is Andrew here. Can I suggest that we take this discussion offline a little bit, because I do want to make sure that Chunlei has a chance to talk about the smart APIs.
Of course, of course.
Great.
Okay, sure. Yeah, okay, let me continue this. Okay, so now we done with BioGPS. The next one I'm going to talk about is basically related to my gene.info and my variant.info. And to quickly recap, is like both of them are high-performance data API for gene and variant annotations. And essentially, for the end user, we provide this two simple endpoint for them to retrieve and query for the annotations. This is for my gene.info. I won't go into the details now. So this is for my variant.info. Right now, those high-performance API are well used, and again, it's very good usage among the research communities. Okay, so now to talk about the collaboration on the MyGene, MyVariant.info, I think this can be twofold. One is both are good data API, and also provided very fundamental knowledge about those genes, gene and the variants. So if there's other application in the BD2K center to develop application and want to use this APIs, you definitely welcome to use it. And also, if there's other resources is suitable, is within the scope of MyGene.info, MyVariant.info, we are happy to include those data and include and make it like available through our high performance API. Another sort of a use case is basically we want to use MyGene, MyVariant.info data API as an example, basically, to explore the way to integrate all these APIs. And because we imagine within our data center, also very likely from all the BD2K centers, we will have a bunch of different data APIs implemented or already exist. So how to integrate them, how to categorize them is very important for the end user, for the other people in the research community to utilize this data APIs. So I will talk about this as well. And the first, and this is also come from the February PI meeting, and we talk about the collaboration between MyVariant.info and the European Variant Archive, and we talk about Justin about this. And this is, I think, both we share the very similar goal, and but we have a different way of aggregating data, and we currently have a different set of annotation data included in our site. And EVA also is developing a data API. So there's a lot we can talk about, and we also talk about how to exchange the data. And so I think this will continue the collaboration with them. So that will be a good collaboration, another good collaboration with the API. And so next we're going to talk about another idea. Mostly is talk about how to do the API integration and the discovery. Given we expect that we'll have many data API available after the BD2K project as this project move forward. So that actually starts from Hackathon. Past the Hackathon, we have a project collaborated between our center and with another CETA center at Stanford. The point person is Michelle Namatio, and so we talk about a project called Smart API, and we actually work on this project during the Hackathon. That's actually very interesting output to come out of the hackathon for us. So essentially, what we want to do about this is to interconnecting the web APIs through the smarter description. This is so-called like smarter description. That means more semantic friendly annotation about the API. And this is like right now we already have a website and there's some basic information, and obviously it's still under construction. So, but you can already find some information from this API, from this website. And so, as I mentioned earlier, the problem we're facing right now is more APIs and existing website like by catalog and like programmable web. Basically, they collect all the data APIs, but there's a lack of the annotation so that we can do we cannot easily do like automatic discovery and also including like connecting the API together to work in a workflow. For example, like maybe my gene.info is about a gene, and my variant.info is about a variant. But oftentimes the variant come associated with the gene. If you want to include like more information about the gene, it's not going to include it in the my variant.info. My variant.info probably only have like a gene ID, gene name, and that's pretty much it. And if you want to say, I want to get the gene PDB structure of the gene or like a pathway associated with this gene, you got to like using the my gene.info to get this information. And how to connect the different type of data API together, that's becomes another challenge. That's also something we want to tackle here. And we also like by working together with CETA group, we submitted a supplementary proposal for this BD2K supplementary grant early a few months ago. We'll see what happened to that. And basically, we propose 3 aims here. First, aim 1 is that we want to build an infrastructure to do the API annotation, adding the semantic based metadata about the API to describe what's the input, what's the output, and all this in a semantic way. Also, by doing this annotation, that will enable us to do a smart API discovery in an automatic way. Also, can chain them together so that we can provide guidance for the downstream user to build the pipeline and integrate all this data API together. And aim 3, we basically want to do some evaluation of all this infrastructure or application we build, and my gene and my variant.info plus the other pharmacological data API will be used here. So so right now I'm gonna basically go through something, go through the stuff we currently is working on, and as part of this I actually done during the hackathon, and we'll continue to develop this after the hackathon right now. First important stuff is called a Smart API metadata standard, or like a protocol. And way we come up with this, mostly this will be led by Stanford team by Michelle. And I think what we propose is that we want to survey all the API metadata field from by catalog and from existing W3C dataset description guideline. And there's also available like software ontology. That's actually multiple one available. And also we will just learn from the existing services, right? And like my gene, my variant, and also other data APIs. So I think Stanford team has a very good experience about the building up the ontology. I think they will take a lead on this and come up a metadata standard so that we can describe all the data API. And with this metadata or standard, we can develop a JSON LD-based data model so that we can describe the API using a JSON LD. Essentially, it's a JSON, another JSON object describes the API. For example, defines like every parameter, what's the minimum, maximum about the parameter, all the relevant information about the API parameter, input, output. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So just to give you a little bit idea
one quick
of
question.
how this is, yeah.
Well, what is
Yes.
the minimum maximum cardinality? Is that the number of degrees that the API can be called by another API?
Oh, it's this minimum maximum cardinality.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's basically just actually it should be this. Oh yeah, basically it means for one parameter. Let's see. For example, chromosome. Chromosome probably only have like from chromosome 1 to to 22 and to 20 to like X, Y, and maybe MT. That's just the range of the value for this particular field. And maybe for other fields, maybe like a SIFT score, that will be only from 0 to 1. That's the cardinality.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so for example, this one show you data structure we can use to describe the mygene.info API. So this is in a JSON LD format, and yeah, it's a little bit busy, but as you can see, basically structure is just very standard, like a description, publisher, with a documentation, term, source URL, publication, keyword. It's very standard, very straightforward. But it's just in a JSON LD semantic way of structure this metadata. Okay, so this is another additional description about the mygene.info. As you can see now here, we describe this input, what's the input parameter, and for example here, accept the HGNC symbol, accept the refsig, accept the Affymetrix ID, and then this number. This number of this cardinality restrictions. That means how many parameter actually you can pass to this parameter. The minimum one and the maximum one basically means you can pass one. Yeah, not actually this value. I take it back. Yeah. And also now you can see this is the input. There's another field basically talk about is the output of this data API. And now you can see like this will output the interest gene, output the symbol, taxonomy ID. Another nice thing is with JSON LD, regardless maybe your data API is JSON output, right? JSON output is just some structure. Maybe there's a genomic position, probably have the genomic position. The next level will be chromosome, star, and end. But with JSON LD, you basically almost like flatten them out just to give a flat list of what's the type of the output parameter, so that you don't have to go through the structure of the JSON output. You can just go through all these types, just a flat list of the output type from that data API, and that's yeah, okay. So there's a lot more we can describe here, but this basically shows a basic of how we can describe the service input and output. And this is very useful when we describe it in a semantic way, so that we can do automatic discussion, automatic discovery and integration. Now, with that, I mentioned is you can, for example, for the mygene.info, we know this actually the input will take the gene symbol, and from my variant.info, we know this output actually will contains the gene symbol. That basically tells us we can link the myvariant.info and the mygene.info API and take the output of this, extract the symbol, and send it to mygene.info. Then we can get back other more information about this gene. That way we can do some automatic discovery based on this annotation. So this is just I want to summarize the Smart API. At the end, I think what we want to deliver is a API metadata standard, and also a metadata web application to facilitate the API metadata annotations. Because if you want to manually construct the JSON LD document I show you in previous slides, it's going to be very tedious. So that's why we want to develop a web application, maybe with auto suggestion, all this good feature, so that it makes this process less tedious, less boring, and also you can see how other people annotated their API, so that it provided the suggestion to annotate your API. And also, we want to produce a web application for the API discovery based on all these annotations. Okay, this is what this is actually come out of the hackathon. We already have a very simple form, and you can fill out all this information about the API, and then it will produce a nice formatted JSON LD document about the annotation of this API. Here we use myg.info as an example, and we are continuing developing this so that it will make it more capable to do the actual annotation. So with that, I will start the discussion and how this can be, how Smart API, or in general the myg.info, myvariant.info data API can be used for our data center. And I think that before this meeting, we already started to talk about some connection between the Smart API to propose the BD2K Data Coordination Center. That's led by Dr. Wei Wan. And we would like to continue that discussion and to see how the Smart API idea we propose here can be linked to the proposed DCC project. And I think this is a good combination of the both project. We can come up with something very useful. And also, I want to mention whether there's any. Maybe we should start to document somewhere. Like, is there any? What are those like existing or proposed data APIs within our center? I know like EBI have a bunch of data APIs, and we have some, and also from UCLA there's some data API like proteomics. I think it's also from the first round. I think you guys are also in development of some data API centered around the proteomics data or protein data. So maybe we should start to put some central place, and we can. I think the first step we can just like document them in a consistent way and in a central place. And I want to mention like we in myg.info, myvariant.info, we use something called like IO docs to document myg and myvariant.info. That actually can be a very nice way, and can be a consistent way of documenting the existing API. Yeah.
So Chunlei, that was outstanding. I'm not sure if Wei is online, but I know Chelsea and Justin and Patrick, the people on our side of the Software 2 development team, some of them are online.
Yes.
So hi Chelsea, morning. We definitely would like to have very extensive and detailed discussions with you regarding the building of the BD2K resource directory. How would that integrate with your Smart API, if that's on the same direction with what Andrew sees? And
definitely, I think we see some potential collaboration. Like we see some potential way we can integrate the Smart API into the BD2K Coordinator Center as we're building the website. But yeah, unfortunately, Wei is not here, so Wei is asking if it's possible to do a more
let's schedule another call just on that topic, if that's okay with you, Chunlei, and Andrew, if that's
totally.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and I think we definitely want to learn a little bit more about the technical detail if we are able to use it or not. So definitely, if we can schedule another meeting, that would be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and this is Andrew here. I mean, I just want to emphasize the point that I think the goal behind the Smart APIs was not to create a resource registry in and of itself, but really to define sort of the interfaces and the specifications that might enhance a data, a resource registry. So I still think, the main bulk of creating the resource itself should fall under the Data Coordination Center. And if this can be sort of a way of, down the line, when it's a little bit more mature, of enhancing the metadata descriptions of the resources there, then I think that's, in my mind, how that ideal interaction will work right now.
Yeah.
Sure. So, Andrew, immediately we see the integration points. One is that for the resource directory, we have to deal with establishing metadata for all the tools that we're going to collect. Otherwise, we'll have a garbage can, right? The second is to facilitate the interface of the directory with all the other resources. We have to build the central API console. So all of that is definitely what you and Chunlei has presented is going to be critical in helping us to build the resource directory.
Great. Yeah.
So there's been a lot of resource directories of various for various purposes, and it always is a huge problem to maintain them up to date. And I see that this is perhaps an even bigger danger here, in the sense that now it's per one resource not only one string or a handful of strings, but a very detailed, complex documentation. So looking at what is now on the screen, that looks like that's a very well-defined standard format.
Right.
Do you see at some point is the plan to get the documentation directly from the resource and therefore much better maintained, so that it's ideally whenever the resource changes the interface, then there would be one query which the central registry, let's say, pulls, give me your current resource description, and then this is pulled into the central registry and indexed. But in this way, this is, I think, or the only approach I see to avoid a maintenance nightmare in the long run, to somehow get the resources in an automated way, ideally directly from the code, generate this description, and then it's pulled into a central place for indexing. So do you have plans on that? Is that technically realistic, or what's your opinion on this?
Yeah, so I think this is a very good point. I think the way, like for example, right now show on the screen right now, this one, I think it's sort of like a work like what you just described. So in order to render an API page like this, and for my gene.info, essentially is something called it's some JSON file. Let me find out the IO docs. Let me give you some example.
Yeah, I know roughly how IO docs works, which is
okay.
It generates the documentation from the code.
Yeah, so from a JSON.
I'm wondering is whether it's possible to have a service, well, basically one web service, one method of a given web service, which is self-document yourself, and you would then just need the central registry of the resources, and the central registry would just need to, every day, every week, every month, whatever, say, pull the information in, tell me if you have updated your methods, and then give me the new documentation.
Yeah.
So is that a realistic proposal, or that's the only way? As I said, I think that would be something how you could get this maintainable. And again, as you already have the first part, namely the auto-generated documentation from the service, my hope would be that it's not that much further to then get this written out into, as a response to a method and be queryable in a fully automated manner.
Yeah, I think that technically I think is doable. It's definitely possible, and for example, at least for IO docs type of annotation, and how it works is for every data API like my.gene.info, we just keep a JSON description about the parameter and this location, all this metadata about the my.gene.info in a JSON document. And then the page you I showed on the screen right now is just like a container to render those JSON metadata. And this JSON metadata, I can imagine that can come from the actual API developer. And if the developer updated that JSON document, then we can immediately see the update on this API page. And maybe we can try to monitor some like a GitHub repository and the path to this JSON metadata. So that way we can have like an automated API documentation, and while each developer maintaining the actual data.
Yeah, I think something like this where it's maintained by the developers, and then there's a central pulling of the information from time to time into a central place where you then mainly you could see, for example, how to connect the different services because they have common attributes and things like this.
Yeah, and
that I think.
Sorry, Henning, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Ultimately, all we would need, I think, is to pull this JSON file, which you just mentioned, which is on every server, and put it onto a central server, and then index it centrally there. Of course, all is, well, that sounds easier than it will be, but that's, I think, the basic approach, which I think might make this relatively maintainable.
Yeah, I mean, just to hit on the last point you raised, Henning, I mean, I think the interoperability, in my mind, is the key thing that we want to hit with the smart APIs, right? Where we host sort of the metadata definition file, whether that's an API call itself, or whether it's a GitHub page we're monitoring, or it's something that we collectively host, I think is less important. The bigger thing to me is how do we enable web service providers to annotate their services in a linked data friendly manner, right? So in this service that Chunlei is showing, right, it says there are fields for entree or ensemble, but those, the ensemble keyword, right, we want to link that to a URI, right? And so building tools that allow people to reference their inputs and outputs relative to well-established URIs in the biomedical sphere, that to me is the key thing that Smart APIs brings.
Right.
But I think you raised the valid point that even with that advantage, we have a maintenance and update potential challenge, and that's one where I think we'd be very happy to defer and coordinate with Wei and the Data Coordination Center on plans to do that.
Just one additional question. Are you aware of the EDAM ontology?
Yes. And that's actually going to be part of one of the resources for us to building the ontology. That's actually a very useful resource. Yes, I'm aware of it.
Okay.
Are you actually using this for any application on your side?
No, we are not maintaining any catalog like this, in my team, but I know that EBI is contributing to the EDAM ontology. I don't actually know who has developed it. It might be, so it seems came out of the EU Biomed Bridges project I just heard from Nick, and that has, or as an aim to encode bioinformatics operations, types of data, formats, and topics, as it says in the top line of the web page. So that might be a useful key, element in implementing this.
Yeah, yeah. That's a very good point. Yeah, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you, Chunlei, for that presentation and initiating great discussions. So we'll conclude our conference here. Thank you, everyone, for attending today's conference.
That was really good. Thank you, Chunlei.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Andrew. We're on the other call, right?
Yes, okay. Great. I'll
we're going to conclude this call and start the other call. I'll do that in my office.
Great. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Hello?
Yes.
So the other call is not the steering group call, right? I don't have anything in my calendar today, so that must be something else which Pepe and Andrew have, right?
Yeah, I guess so. I don't.
I see BK leadership conference call on my calendar. Yeah, my calendar says BK leadership conference call. I think that was the call, right?
You have it in your calendar? Okay, then I have. Okay. Okay, anyway, I'll try and see what happens. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.